Hello and welcome to our channel, Marstream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of Marstream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to Stephanie's Marstream with tonight's special guest, Melissa Bangs. I'm Stephanie Wiseman, Artistic Director and founder of The Marsh and Marstream. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, I'm thrilled to be back in our writing room collaborating with Melissa Bangs on developing her new performance and book, Mama. This is a little rundown of how the night's going to go. First, we're going to bring Melissa. Then we're going to talk a little bit. Then she's going to read her story, and then we're going to open up the chat for your comments and discussion. But first, let me give you a short bio about the incredible Melissa Bangs. She's a storyteller, a comedian, a writer, director, and producer. Her first one-woman show, Playing Monopoly with God and Other True Stories, rocked thousands of hearts and blew minds. Over the past 7 years, Melissa shared her harrowing journey with postpartum psychosis with sold-out and packed houses all over the country. And now, let's welcome Melissa Bangs and her new project, Mama. Hello, Melissa.
Hello, Stephanie.
So great to see you.
So wonderful to be with you and everybody.
Well, let's see. So tonight you're going to be working on part 2 of Mama. Is that correct?
I am. I'll be reading the draft of part 2 tonight.
And instead of about you being the mama, as it was in your last piece, this is about your actual mama, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so many, looking at the audience, there are a load of people here that did see part 1, but for those that didn't see part 1, it'd be interesting to share that, I lost my mama almost 3 years ago on December 14th. And when she passed, like the first thing that I wrote within a few days was her eulogy. And it just felt from beyond me, it felt channeled, it just came. And so even after her celebration of life, I just kept writing eulogies, and they felt like these love letters to her in the great beyond, and almost like pieces that I could, put on an altar to her. But I felt like I was grieving her and mourning and remembering and processing and making sense of all that I had to learn from her excruciating departure. And I'm already choking up. Oh my God, people, I just started my period like 10 minutes ago. We're totally fucked.
I don't know if we are, but maybe you are.
But my hope is that she will come alive for you in these pieces, as she is for me and as she does for me, both for people that knew her and loved her, and even for people that this is the way you're coming to know her. And I really want to encourage the audience throughout to Stephanie and I will engage you directly at the end. I won't look at the chat while I'm telling the story, but as I'm going, let me know what's hilarious, what rocks you, even read a couple words of what I just said, and then your response, whether I lost you, confused you, kicked you in the gut, made you laugh out loud. Because the idea is that you come into the writer's room with us and your help shaping this piece, shaping this book. And I think I've shared in the past that I just imagine all of your fingerprints on the final work. So I'd love to hear from you. And I get to read all of that. Even though I won't be looking at the chat while I'm doing the story, they all get printed and I get to read them all tomorrow. So I will see.
Yeah. And we met, how many years ago has it been now?
Oh my gosh. Is it 5?
Maybe.
Or
4? It feels like yesterday.
It does.
And I got to meet you, and I got to meet your mother. I've only met you that one time in person.
I know.
But that one time did include your mama. So
it's so wild. It feels like this project was absolutely meant to be, because Stephanie and I met, and my mom, we met in New York City at a performing arts conference, APAP, with like 9,000 performances in 5 days throughout New York City. And we met each other. And then you offered to bring, or we talked about bringing Playing Monopoly with God to San Francisco, to the Bay Area, to the Marsh. And then I kind of disappeared on you because her diagnosis came a minute later, after, just a couple months after I met you. And yeah, so it all sort of feels meant to be, that she was so real to you, and we had those really wonderful moments together in New York.
Absolutely. So anything else you want to talk about before you get to the story?
I'll just quickly say that this one was harder for me. This one was more exhausting. And for those that heard part one, you may hear that in the piece, or you may be able to imagine why. If you haven't seen part one, you want to see it. All of these, every show that the Marsh does in Marsh Stream is online, easily accessible, so you can watch that anytime. But I wanted to write a piece about the forgiveness and the revelation that came in losing her. And I knew that for that to really make any sense or have weight, or for there to be a real arc, I had to go to some of the tough places in our journey. And I did struggle with writing some of the stories where, for a long time in my life, I felt wounded by particular, and this isn't an entire story. This whole piece, which is about a half an hour long, is not a series of wounded stories. They're really funny ones too. You can't write about my mom without writing some really funny stories. But we healed so much in her dying. And so the way that she is with me now in my memory, the way I live with her living spirit, is so light and so unencumbered by any of the old stuff, that it was actually hard for me to go back to the way I used to carry the stories. And I think I did an okay job about going to the hard shit. Like I dipped my toe in the hard stuff. And we'll see if, when it comes to the book, do I have it in me to write the really, really hard stuff? And I'll be interested to hear from all of you, from you, Stephanie, from the audience, like, did this work as a whole piece? I will say that it was heavy enough for me, and just even in the missing her, that I had to intermittently binge watch The Great British Baking Show, on and off between writing, like write, sob, go deep, and then watch British baking, and then back. The caramel episode saved my life, I'll say. I do want to give a trigger warning that, we will just very briefly, again, touch on molestation, like in one sentence or a couple sentences. There's domestic violence a little bit in this piece. Of course, there's death and dying. So if these themes are too much for you, I really encourage you to take care of yourself tonight. I want to thank you so much, Stephanie, for this incredible creative space and process. This wouldn't be happening without you. And it is so cool to be working on a piece and have an audience and creative hearts and minds to process a work in the making. I love it. It's cool. I've never done anything like it. I really see the Marsh Theater as change maker. And so please do consider making a donation tonight at whatever level feels great. And I'm ready to jump in.
And I just want to add, it's, this whole process has been like a collaboration, a partnership with you, and opened up how, Stephanie's Marsh Stream never did anything like a writer's room before. And, and as we move through it and develop it and evolve it, now we're doing each piece twice. In the second part, we have other guests come on that talk with us. And so, thank you, Melissa, for, being this partner in advancing this whole approach. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephanie. It's just like such a delight. And I love that you bring that up. Yeah, November 11th, Kimley Smith, who's an extraordinary one-woman performer, director, just a force. And oh my gosh, Sharon, what's that?
Eberhardt. Sharon
Eberhardt. I wasn't sure how to say her last name, who's an incredible writer and performer in her own right. They'll both come, and we'll discuss the piece November 11th. Again, part 2 again for those that missed it. Well, thank you, Stephanie.
Are you ready to start this story?
I'm ready. Should I go for it?
Woohoo! Hello, let's go.
I still smell her, you know, China lily and geranium, cardamom and thyme. My mama smelled fucking delicious. Whether through beauty ritual or culinary endeavor, she was consistently the most incredible smelling thing in the room. She would waft in, conversations paused. Conscious or not, folks were trying to figure out what smelled so damn good. I'm so thankful for the persistent way she inhabited spaces with her bold, intentional aromas. For some, she was a dramatic affront. For me, she was divine. Did you know that smells bypass the thalamus altogether? They commingle directly with the amygdala and the hippocampus, delivering detailed memories wrapped in emotion. It was as if throughout my life, she had playfully tossed me a trail of aromatic breadcrumbs, a sure path home to her in moments of need. When I left for college, I grabbed a bottle of China lily essential oil. I was taking her with me. In moments when I needed comfort or simply a dose of her, I'd take a big whiff of my oiled wrist, and there she was, right by my side, or up my nose. And now, at nearly 50, with her having left the earthly realm altogether, I conjure her immediate and visceral presence by diffusing geranium oil or slow simmering her peanut sauce. I find her every time amidst the sizzling ginger and garlic, the peanut and sesame. Thank God she left me this pathway to her. Sometimes the power of it takes my breath away. It's like this beautiful kick in the gut, feeling her in such a primal way, like I've climbed the tangled threads of the emotional umbilical cord that we never severed, through stone and cloud, dark and wind, to find her, my mama, the center of my universe, the beginning of everything. Aromas were not the only way she invaded personal spaces. Boundaries were not her strength. She kind of sucked at them. I do too. Our enmeshment was symbiotic bliss for a very long time. We didn't know any better. We didn't know where she stopped and I began. I was immersed in her hopes, her dreams, her fears, her opinions, her needs, and it wasn't all her. For years, my mom would joke that if I could, I would crawl back up in her womb. I mean, who wouldn't? If you could fit. Yeah, I wouldn't even attempt to individuate, like become my own separate person for years. There are these relationships in our lives, if we're lucky, that let us know what it is to be real, to truly fully be seen, heard, and loved. I was her velveteen rabbit, and she was mine. We were real in one another's gaze. While my mama's and my love was not uncomplicated nor without toxicity and wound, she was my first and among my greatest loves. Yes, there were highs and lows, and yet in all of our shared humanity, I never felt alone. And there was a reason for this. It had been very intentional, animal, instinctual. If you asked my mama to describe one of the most unceasing feelings in her childhood, it would have been loneliness. When she was very young, her father returned from World War II, a broken man, shards blasted from the wreckage of his mind, lodging themselves in all that surrounded him. My mama, her brother Jack, my grandma Phyllis, my great-grandmother Emily, no one was left unharmed. Both mama and Jack, still so young, would be forever scarred by twisted sexual moments in the dark. My grandma Phyllis did what women didn't do in the late 1940s. She left in the night. She had witnessed in small silence too many jagged moments marinated in scotch. Her husband's hauntings from the war lashing out, eviscerating tender hearts and bodies. She took her children and her mom and left behind the empty exoskeleton of the man she had so deeply loved. For years, they would feel hunted. My mama remembered only flashes. Late one night, shattered glass, shaking house, a cold knife, her mother's warm throat, her father yelling, daring Jack to call the police, then black. And for many years to come, Grandma provided for her family on long hours and a secretary's salary. She was rarely home. My mama's memories of her latchkey childhood were inhabited with this overwhelming space and silence, waiting and wanting. At 7 years old, she navigated the city bus system in Providence, Rhode Island, alone. As my mama, she put her professional life on hold. She embedded herself, her DNA, into our meals, teams and activities, cares and woes, friendships and fallouts. In high school, even when she threw herself into a vast and thriving international career, she ran with my running team and cheered me to the finish line, whether I was winning or passing out in my own vomit or both. She enrolled with me in Toastmasters and even lent me her Kelly Green power suit with giant rad shoulder pads when I ran for student body vice president. Throughout my life, she was there. In moments of life and death, she was there. Truth be told, if not for the animal ferocity of her love, I would have died at 21 years old in a hospital bed of metal bars and rough bleached sheets in Council Bluffs, Iowa, the middle of fucking nowhere. Two of my besties, my mama and I, were on a grand tour in the deep South. She had invited us on a business trip, exchanging sweat equity for adventure. During our downtime, we strolled through a blues-soaked night on Bourbon Street, found our way to a swamp bar on stilts filled with pulsing Zydeco and zesty frog legs. We played tag with the fireflies, laughed out loud as we dodged live possum on the road, filled our bellies with buttery crawfish and gumbo, and skipped arm in arm in syncopated fashion through the French Quarter. A few days later, when it was time to head home, Mama flew back early, allowing us girls a leisurely meander. We pointed north to Montana, put the little punchy RV on cruise, and took turns driving. At some point in those first few days, I felt a tickle, then a chill. Soon I was under a blanket, burning up. That next morning, when the exquisite concertos I thought my friends had put on to soothe me followed me all the way into the cold, pale yellow bathroom stall in the gas station, I knew something was wrong. We pulled into the nearest hospital. I figured they'd do an assessment, throw me a bottle of antibiotics, and we'd hit the road. Instead, I was immediately admitted with a 106-degree fever. My memories of the hospital room are blurred fragments of ice baths, blood draws, body shaking, too weak to lift my head. Shrouded phrases echoed, likely brain damage, her body's not responding, more tests needed. 4 doctors, and this 106-degree illness had no name. To my mom, they said, "Come now, before it's too late." When she arrived at my bedside, she found me violently shaking in a soaked pile of bed sheets, my hospital gown twisted up around me. The medical team had all but given up. She came to me as she always had, with tender head rubs, baby talk, and fierce fight. She banned the nurse from my room after 4 failed blood draw attempts at 5 a.m. She shouted at the doctor, "What do you mean you don't know? You're the doctor." She didn't leave my side. She felt my pain as only Mama could, as if maybe she could lift its weight from me. While my body was aching carnage, my spirit had been floating beyond the ceiling painlessly for days. The sanitized cold of the hospital room with the incessant buzz of the television seemed miles away from this peaceful place. Flanked by 2 beings of light, I felt enveloped in an ancient belonging. I understood I was dying. With an awe-filled gratitude, I felt no loss, no grasping. They showed me my entire life, beautiful vignettes, adorned moments, a touch, a look, laughter shared, tears shed. Somehow this near-death soul view made all of the experiences I'd had, from great loss to sublime victory, feel perfect, complete. These bright beings spooning me were long-lost homies, and we were headed home. I was amped. But suddenly down below, my mama was sobbing, clinging. I was thrown into a different movie. It came in heavy bursts. My mama in agony with my dead body, her devastation at my funeral, her many years after I'd passed, utterly broken. In a flash, I was sucked back into my shaking ache of a body, back to my mama's beautiful caramel eyes. Fervent and frustrated, she grabbed me by the collar of my hospital gown and said, "Look here, you little bitch. I brought you into this world and I'm leaving before you. You got it?" Years later, she would tell me that that was my story, that she never called me bitch, although bitch was often a term of endearment easily flung between us. What we both agreed was true was that she had been told that there was nothing more they could do. So she took the wheel. I couldn't even lift my hand off the bed, and she said, steely-eyed, "Tomorrow, we're walking down the hall and back. Friday to the lobby, and Saturday, we're flying home. Do you hear me, honey? We're going home." Right then and there, my soul made a very clear choice. Stay. I would stay. While I had been blissed out, happy to hopscotch through an illuminated tunnel with my homies, my mama had set me straight, showed me the way, and reminded me that there is no drug or intervention more powerful than her mama love. She mamaed me big time that day. I was clearly the baby. She was clearly the mama. It was not always so clear with us who was the mama and who was the baby, who was protector and protected. It's as if the job descriptions were never formally administered. We were lodged in one another, and within this tangle of blurry lines, we took turns as child and adult. My earliest memories of her crawling into sleep with me in my vast double mattress on the floor of my room was around 3 or 4. I understood there were things in another part of our home, another part of herself she was avoiding. I was her safe place. When I was young, she and her friends would joke that I was 8 going on 32, that I was her therapist, deeply listening and affirming the truth of her pain. I was often hurt by her unbridled anger, but somehow I provided the very thing she needed. Whether she was screaming at my dad, my brother, the dog, or me, through empathy or injury, her pain became my pain. It never occurred to me that it could or perhaps should have been different. I was only a child and she was my world. I freely offered my tender heart to let her know she was not yelling into the nothingness. I would often cry or apologize, soothe, and believe her. I was her first unconditional love, a salve to so many old hurts that told her she was unworthy, unaccompanied. She called me her angel and told me that I'd come in to heal her. By birthing me into this world, it was almost as if that little wounded girl within her had been given a body. And if she could cherish me enough and hold me close, she could heal herself by loving me. And yet my vulnerability, just the simple smallness of me, kicked her hyper-vigilant mama bear brain into overdrive. Protect, protect, protect. All the survival techniques that had so long protected the little girl and her fierce opinions, her hands on hips, hawking loogies, up in your face, feisty broad, dripping in F-bombs, none of it made her feel safe enough. She had hidden her little girl deep inside for so long, but in my giant eyes, the rolls of baby fat on my belly and thighs, and the smell of my baby skin, she was sent reeling. There were countless moments my mama sought to protect me from a world whose weather forecast was sourced from the hurricanes of her childhood. But often, when the role reversal came unannounced, it was like a punch in the face. One winter's day, I was around 19. We were layered up, ice skates tied by the laces tossed over our shoulders, traipsing through deep snow down a white and wandering lane. After delicately climbing through a couple of frosty fences, we crunched our way toward the cottonwood grove, the crystallized gateway to the frozen backwater pond. Suddenly we heard a shriek. Our heads swiveled round in unison toward this distinct equine call. And there he was in all his glory, this handsome wild stallion, protector of his small but utterly free herd, barreling toward us, neck stretched, ears pinned back, teeth bared. There was no time to think. I grabbed my mama's hand and started running as fast as I could in stiff, shin-deep snow. In the awkward flurry of it all, I could hear my mama screaming, unhinged. I could hear these enormous animals closing in. It became clear in less than a second, as if time had truly stopped in the do or die of it all, that we could never make it to the fence before they reached us. Without thought, I changed directions, yanking my mom's arm taut, never pausing in pace. We sprinted toward the frozen pond. Moments later, we hit the ice, slipping, slowing, awkwardly finding our way to the center. I heard the horses' pounding hooves and snorts accompanying our panic. As the herd spread through the cottonwoods, flurries of snow flew in every direction as this beautiful mass of hide and muscle suddenly careened to a halt. But the big boy up front, he didn't stop. He hit the ice and his back legs immediately gave out under him. In an instant, he's sliding toward us. Mama yelps, grabs me, and jerks herself behind me, putting me between her and Handsome. As he's scrambling and sliding toward us, she shrieks and falls violently, taking me with her. On our backs, breathing hard, we listen blindly to the giant animals struggle while I pray he doesn't collide with us. He doesn't. He stops, then stumbles and snorts his way off the ice. The rumble of the herd slowly fades beyond the cottonwoods. My mom and I lay there spinning in our minds. As our misty breath mingles with the cold blue sky, I burst out, "Where's your fucking mothering instinct?" And she says, "You're bigger than me." It's true. I had been since the 7th grade. We wore the same size shoe for about 6 months when I was 10. She had long perceived me as bigger than her. She often forgot I was the child. Still, there was never a doubt that I was deeply loved. She poured love on me. I felt beautiful, capable, fierce, and creative in her gaze. Over the years, her accompaniment ranged from solidly effective to out-of-the-box questionable. For my 13th birthday, my mom, who had previously thrown her entire self into homemade birthday cakes, to the hilt decorations and scavenger hunts, left behind all tradition and instead hosted a slumber party complete with Seagram's Kiwi Lime wine coolers and Playgirl magazines. This shit was covert psychops aversion therapy. I don't think she even told one of my mom's friends about the campaign, even when green foaming puke meant none of us would touch alcohol for several years to come. Perhaps the most inspired move was the Playgirl. She seemed so sex positive, so open and potty mouth, so much more like a cool older sister than a mom. But have you seen a Playgirl from 1986? This collection of male models was disturbingly hairy. Sure, I had posters of steamy hunks on my walls or shoved in notebooks, but they were hairless pretty boys. These models were from another realm. Think Tom Selleck, but less handsome. And I don't consider Tom Selleck handsome. It was like a lineup of naked Chuck Norrises. Now, keep in mind, most of us were just beginning to have hair down there. Not only was the idea of sexualizing old men disturbing, but we had no comfort or reference point for all that hair. And their male members were fucking enormous, like giant stiff reptiles shooting out of their groins, covered in veins, red and purple and disgusting. So yeah, she did it. She successfully ensured there would be 0 penises in my midst for a very long time to come. Now, hairless girl bodies, that's a story for another time. To this day, I can't tell you if the aversion therapy element was intentional or if she was just hoping to keep us safe by keeping us close. I can tell you that at 17, when I convinced her after a dozen unwanted, embarrassing conversations that I was still a virgin, she asked me with a worried tone, "Oh, honey, did I do this to you? Do you think you need therapy? When I was your age, I was flipping them like pancakes." I said, "Mom, I'm not you. I'm not ready." Planets seemed to shift behind her eyes. I could feel it in my organs, in my internal solar system, so inextricably linked to hers. Was I suggesting we were 2 different women having 2 profoundly different experiences? What? The nerve. Disentangling oneself from an immersive mama-daughter bond is not child's play. It took tidal waves of teenage hormones to gather the chutzpah to even suggest I was my own person. I remember one rainy afternoon, I came home from school and immediately began to tidy. I picked up shoes and bags and garbage and did some dishes. I had been long trained to identify the red flags in the room ablaze with the possibility of Mama's next explosion. Messes were one of them. I hurried. She'd be home soon. When she waltzed in with smiles and hugs, I stopped breathing. It took another minute before she noticed something, perhaps several things, out of whack. Immediately, she set in with high volume expletive torrent. I was the only target in the room. Suddenly, I felt dizzy and flushed as I heard my words already shouted, echoing in my mind. "You're so full of shit, Mom." The next moment was pure flow state. Ninja. I'm simultaneously thinking, oh no, what did I just say? I mean, I had never stood up to her. I'd never refused to stand in the line of fire. And in that very moment, without thought, I catch her right wrist as she attempts to slap me. Her eyes jump and she squirms, and then I catch her left wrist an inch from my face. And for a split moment, I tighten my grip and she tries to pull away, and I punctuate my wrist hold. And I say with this deep voice within me that I'd never heard before, "Don't you ever hit me." In a burst, she slips from my grip, stands back, points to the ceiling and yells, "Go to your room." I gripped the railing tight, steadying the adrenaline rush in my legs as I headed upstairs. I heard her fire through the closed door and the floor beneath my feet. "We'll see who pays for your college." We were in new territory. I made some geographic efforts to chart my own distinct personhood in my 20s and 30s. When I moved away from Montana, she was sure to visit me: Santa Cruz, San Francisco, El Salvador, New York City. Our bond often flourished in the distance, the missing one another and the pure joy of being reunited. But a doozy of a chapter came at 40 when my daughter Adelaide was born. At first, Mama was right there, holding me and Adelaide with tender hands, soft words, warm food. But when I returned home from the psych ward after an episode of postpartum psychosis, her anxiety took the wheel. Whatever it was, Mama was on it, controlling everything, feeling safe only at the helm, with every detail within her view and command. But the thing is, one of the greatest wounds of losing my mind was losing my voice. My capable, knowing, articulate self seemed to fade from the scene. I desperately needed to be heard and trusted. And as I began to find my voice, my yes, my no, even in the smallest ways, what onesie did I want to put on Adelaide? And when and where did I want to pump? My mama had opinions and judgment, input on all of it. And as I struggled to find my own compass, my own mama instinct and desires, her litany of suggestions was overwhelming. One evening, as I felt myself spinning in a flurry of do's and don'ts, shoulds and shouldn'ts, I said, "Mom, back off. Stop telling me what to do." Immediately, she dove into her victim gown. And much like the wild stallion who had hit the untenable boundary of the ice, she snorted her way out of the house, shouting, "You never listen to me. It's as if I'm not even here. Was I an utter failure of a mother?" A couple days later, I said, "Mama, I love you. I hear you, but you have to let me do this. This is my turn to be the mama. And when I choose a different way, it's not a criticism of you. I need you to give me the room to find my own way." At some point in those first few months, and then over the first few years, my mama took a major step back. She was deeply hurt. If I wasn't going to take her advice, what good was she? If she wasn't in control, it wasn't a safe place to be. If my mom did agree to be with Adelaide in those early years, she would often cancel. She didn't want to be alone with her. Too many times to count, we'd arrive to pick up Ada and she'd be sitting in a poopy diaper. "I've changed my share of poopy diapers," she'd say. Yuck. Eventually, Adelaide was out of diapers and Mama popped up out of nowhere, wanting to take her regularly to lunch at Cafe Dolce for grilled cheese and gelato, or a series of Sunday matinees. Giant bags of her own organic buttered popcorn with nutritional yeast, and have Adelaide help her smuggle it in. She was picking up books at garage sales to read to her and growing pea sprouts for her to eat. She showed her where the best chocolate mint patch was in her yard, and they played croquet for hours. I tried to make sense of her sudden arrival. Then one day, in the midst of their bubbling bursts of shared giggles and inside jokes, it hit me: Mama's source wound. Knowing dropped into my belly from the great beyond. Did you know that when a person experiences trauma, adrenaline rushes through the body and the memories imprinted within the limbic system? The amygdala stores lived moments as sensory fragments: images, smells, sounds, tastes, and touch. Later, the brain out of nowhere can read sensory input: a smell, a touch, an image, as dangerous, flooding the person with panic. I'll never know, was it the sight of her little baby girl parts, the smell of her baby soft skin, or the poopy diaper that sounded the alarms? But I do know she couldn't bear to be with Ada's little baby or toddler body. She was lurched neurochemically back to dark, unbearable chapters of her own childhood. My beautiful mama, with her sprouts and mint, buttered popcorn and croquet mallets, couldn't arrive earlier, but she came as soon as she could. I felt so loved, so held by her presence, every moment once again divine. Our little three-way love fest lasted a couple years before Mama's lung cancer diagnosis arrived. When it came to her dying, her final 10 months, I never took her by the collar, never told her how it was going to go. There were several moments I imagined collapsing at her feet, sobbing, begging her to stay, demanding it. One afternoon toward the very end, dappled autumn hues spread across her sweet, sallow face as she dozed in her green leather chair under a mound of blankets. Small, raspy breaths seemed to fight their way to and fro. My chest and belly pounding, with the all-consuming ache of her being ever so slowly torn from me. Before I left that day, I placed a quiet note at her side. It read, "Please stay." What if I begged, demanded? Would she be here? Would I have pulled that glorious little bitch from the clouds away from her heavenly friends and had one last chapter with her? I don't know. But I know a few things. There are gifts in death, gifts I never imagined, gifts I'm still making sense of. I know that for a year before her diagnosis, I dreamt of cancer cells proliferating, and I would hear the word cancer while doing dishes or on a hike. And when the news came, a very calm voice within me said, "The time has come. This is the final chapter. Put down the old, tired stories. They have no place here. Show up now loving her for all you're worth." And when it came time for her to be the baby, for me to carry her, wash her, wipe her butt, it felt so entirely, excruciatingly right. When she made her third trip to Mexico as she fought for her life, she told Walter, her husband, and I that she had to go alone. "Where I'm going is a solo journey," she said. What? Was she now trying to individuate at 95 pounds with tumors throughout her body? The nerve. She was showing herself, Walter and me, that she could do it. She was mustering the strength of that little girl that navigated a city bus system all alone. And as she wasted away over those 10 months, I realized that our mother-daughter dance had never been fixed. It had always been evolving. And in the best and worst of times, moments of rupture and repair, we had always been on the road to healing. I took off my victim gown, shed the old stories, and just loved her, just simply, purely loved her. And from this place, I pondered things like, didn't the mistakes, the enmeshment, and the hurts give me some of my most important capacities, like empathy and deep listening? Didn't her anger and our mother-daughter dance gift me a very powerful no? I wondered if a zero enmeshment policy was somehow connected to cultural values that pedestalize the individual's journey versus the collective journey, if it wasn't tied to privilege and capitalism. I pondered, am I not her? Is she not me? Did she not carry with her the wounds of her mother and father, her grandparents and ancestors? And have they not been passed generation to generation, the wounds, the gifts, the humor, the capacity for story, and so much more? She healed so much in her life, protected me from loads that she had faced as a child, but she couldn't bear it all alone. And so I carried it with her, each generation healing another layer. And just when I think we finally pulled it off, that yes, it did take her dying, but we have officially cut that umbilical cord, she wafts in. And I think, who am I kidding? It's her dream come true. She's up in my business all the time now. I get this giant whiff of China Lily, and she's right here, her baby soft hand holding my face, gazing at me with caramel eyes, telling me, "You've always been my angel, Melissa. You came in to heal me." And you did. And while the weight of that task was too much for a child, it's the journey of a lifetime. And in the soul view that death provides, I see the perfection in all of it. From the moments of great loss to sublime victory, our love was complete. Thank you.
Wow, Melissa. Wow. Oh my goodness. Such beautiful writing, such beautiful emotional stories, such stories. Oh my goodness. How do you feel?
Oh, it's way more weepy than all the other times. Like that was hard. That was if yeah, that was hard not to cry a lot in, but good, like incredible to share it. And um I feel her, and I feel um you know, as a mama, I work to heal my wounds that I took on as a child so I don't repeat them with Adelaide. And I do, and I don't. Like I mess up and I get it right, and there's rupture and there's repair, and I just feel like delving into these stories and learning everything I can from our love and from her departure, and holding her memory and our love close, and just letting it all go, just helps me. I feel like one of my biggest jobs on the planet is to heal as much as I can and pass as little as I can to Adelaide. Like way less rupture, more repair. And my mom did that for me. Way less rupture, more repair. She did.
So it's generational.
Yeah.
So when you talk, so here we have part 2. Now, what do you find is different in part 2 than part 1? What
So
did you
funny. I
find?
like forget part 1 right now. What was part 1 about?
I think it was about your mother.
Yeah, it was, and she died, and it was about her. It was so much about the way that she created beauty in her life, and the way she created her celebration of her body, and her celebration, and how much she loved being naked, and her incredible humor and just zest for life, and like bringing her alive, and her expression and her beauty and her color and her nudity and all of it, and her wild, but also tying that to these being survival instincts, right? And a way that she carved a place of her own, made a beautiful world of her own. This piece, I feel like, gets more into the mother-daughter dance, right? Mother-daughter love, and our journey together, and yeah, I'm so curious about, like, for you, Stephanie, and the audience as well, how you relate to that.
Well, I mean, it just, it opens up your heart, right? It opens up your heart to hear your story, for me, to hear your story. So it opens my heart to you and your mom. And it also opens my heart to me, my mom, my life, things, whatever's going on with my daughter, all the things in my own life that bump up are similar, different. It just kind of expands into me because you put out this beautiful, deeply, it's a deep story, right? It's a deep, deep story. And with that depth, it makes me mirror the depth within myself.
Right. I love that. I wonder if others traveled to, in hearing it, if you travel to places in your own mother-daughter dance.
And it just, like when you talk about the cottonwoods and the stallion on ice, I mean, that's so far different than where I grew up in upstate New York, although there was snow and there was places to go ice skating. but also that experience of your Montana life versus upstate New York life, which is pretty rural. You know, it's not, I'm not talking about the city, I'm talking about the sticks. But still, you know, to add that flavor, you know, there's that additional flavor of that environment that you are so beautifully landscaping for us.
Thank you.
You're getting a lot of wonderful chats, words in the chats. What would you like? What do you need?
What do I need?
What do you need from us right now? I mean, you talk.
I mean, I'm reading through the chat, and I'm loving, like, the comments are like salve, definitely like medicine for me in this process, and even my healing journey. Holly Carnes, I could feel her intensity and fury as a mother. I didn't know that side of her. Yeah, and just so many pieces here. I wonder, you know, I wonder where I left you wanting more, or were there places that I lost you? You know, like, do you have questions for me when we think about either finishing, you know, like this is a draft of part 2, and then next comes part 3. And I know there's a part 3 and 4, and I don't know, is this book made of 7 eulogies or 10, or is it just 5? I don't know. Like, I feel like my creative process is so intuitive.
I think the thread of loneliness in your mother's early life, I know you brought that up, and I'm not sure if I kept that thread throughout. It did pop, you kind of popped through it to talk about the things that had happened, and I was like, oh, well, maybe that's about the loneliness.
Yes.
I'd like to see, you know, I would have to hear it again, but you know what I mean? That really popped up when you talked about her loneliness. What was that line?
Yeah, I say, let's see, did I minimize it? I said something about, like, if you were to ask my mama, one of the most prevailing feelings of her childhood, it would have been loneliness. And my intention in the piece was to, my understanding of how much her mothering instinct and style and way was very present and pervasive, but also very enmeshed with me, was because she felt so alone that both I was an anecdote to the loneliness she still carried in her, but also she wasn't going to let me be lonely like that little girl had been lonely. And there was an overcompensation in that, right? And there was beauty that came from that, and tough stuff that came from that. Vanessa Nassett says, your stories actually caused me to reflect on my relationship with my father, as he was the one with the traumatic history stemming from his parents' experiences in Indian boarding schools. It has been my mission to work on, like you said, repairing rather than rupturing. It is a gift I can give my kids. I love you. I love you too, Vanessa. Oh, so powerful. It's the hardest work of our lives, I think, to do that. Kendra's hand is up. Does that mean can Kendra talk? Oh, can she talk? Can we let her talk? Yeah. No?
David, producer David, can we let Kendra talk?
I see the hand, Kendra. Okay, I'm asking you to unmute.
There we go. Hi, Mela.
Hi, Kendra.
Oh, thank you. I'm not good at the typing. I have to say the words.
Okay, good.
As I feel like you probably can relate. The speaking and the processing, and thank you so much. I loved I loved the weaving through the science and the anatomy of the brain. I found that to be this really beautiful way of, and you're so fantastic at transitions. Your transitions were excellent. From like moving back and forth between in time and in relationality and in reflecting versus but I felt like the incredibly human element of like what's happening in the amygdala, what's happening in the body in these ways. And I'm sure it's going to continue in your third section. And I found it to be this grounding us in a really strange and lovely way as you're moving between human and spirit, to get so human as to talk about the matter of the brain. And I'm so grateful for the sharing of your grief process and the incredible, like, universal experience that we all get to share with you in the more specific that you're going. Like, the more specific you are, the easier it is to relate, which I think you know, but I just want to validate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your beautiful words and for being here. I love that. Somewhere in the writing of this one, I have always felt like the one woman show will be a different thing, a different living thing, and that it will be born out of this process. And it was in writing this one, it came to me what the show is. The book is Mama, the Eulogies. The show is just Mama, and the show will be the 3 generations. And it will be my moments of rupture with Adelaide and the agony of hurting your child and the way you were hurt as a child, and the, forgiveness of oneself and the growth and the healing. And I do want to do a lot of science, like what happens in the brain, because I feel like, as moms, but even as providers, but as a mom, it allows me a way into compassion for myself and for my mom, right? To understand.
Oh, for sure.
Right,
and to know, like, what does trauma do to the brain and what does dying do to the brain? Like, I found myself wanting, when you were talking about that last 10 months, like what was happening in her brain, or how was this, the science of of her physical, what demise, and what was your experience, and then what was happening internally in that maybe can help to explain in a way that's not dissimilar to, like, understanding what postpartum psychosis is when we know what's happening chemically.
That just gave me goosebumps, the idea of, I'm going to check that out, like what was actually happening in her brain as she passed, because there are other pieces that are coming where I go more into the cancer journey. And the cancer as this presence in her life, and this and to other layers of the dying itself. And so I think the science of what was happening would be amazing. We only have 5 minutes left. If you can
sorry, I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, love you. I love, like, I'm reading these chats and loving all them loneliness. I'm looking forward to hearing about how she dealt with her loneliness by bringing wonderful people together. Memories along the river, sisterhood, meals and wine, deep talks, all ages. Yes, Holly Carnes. Yes, absolutely. And I don't know, Holly, if you got to hear part 1, but I touch on all the beauty that she created, and that she created so much celebration and beauty, and that, like, her meals and her yard and her home, and that she was a walking piece of art. And I do touch on the trauma from a child in that piece as well. Yes, so yeah, I see you loved part 1. You saw it. Wonderful. Stephanie, did you have more questions or things you wanted to say in our?
No, I was just thinking about the generational aspect of, how many generations does it take to make it okay? How could there be still so much trauma? Is trauma, not you can't get beyond it,
I
no
know it's
matter
so
how many
interesting.
go
I
by.
do want to bring in epigenetics and the study of epigenetics that is looking at 4 and 5 and further generations back of how long ago, how many generations trauma can be carried through in your DNA, right? And I'm also really curious about, and if anyone has any knowledge about this and wants to send me links, or, okay, so Teresa, who knows, trauma travels through at least 3 generations. And I think Bertie Brown, I think, might also be here. And this is something she's looked at a lot and may know in terms of epigenetics. But I'm also so curious about, there are studies about trauma traveling in the brain. Or the multiple generations. And someone had said to me the other day, it was 4 or 5 generations. I'm also curious about, like, how about the gifts and the survival instincts and, like, all the ways you wildly, creatively, powerfully respond to trauma? Does that also travel in the DNA? It makes me think of, I had a dear friend, actually a partner of like 6.5 years. He was my partner, and he lived on the Cape Verdean Islands, Cabo Verde, which were the islands that were uninherited until the slave trade. They did not exist until the slave trade. So everyone there, comes from generations of the slave trade, and are a mix from tribes where people were, kidnapped and tortured from all over West Africa, and also a mix with Portuguese slave traders and slave owners. And in his island, he had these incredible stories about the humor of their island, and that they were known throughout all the islands of having this most extraordinary sense of humor. And I started thinking about, like, can that be tracked in the DNA? Is that in the brain? Could that be seen?
Interesting that if there's only been focus on trauma and not on survival and not on creativity and playfulness and all that stuff, is it not interesting that it will be interesting to find out if that also is included in the studies?
Absolutely. I know I'm so touched and moved by all of your presence, your hearts and minds. Thank you so much for your chats. I've read a bunch of them, and just so precious to me, and I'll read all of them tomorrow. And just you coming and being on this journey with me is everything. And if you at some point in the middle of the night or tomorrow or a week from now are like, I want to know more about this and that section, or like, I have this idea for section 3, or please reach out. I'd love for you to be a part of this in whatever way feels right to you. Please let people know who you think might love this piece, that we will run it again November 11th live. We'll do it again, and we'll have a couple of incredible storytellers here with Steffi and I on a panel. And then part 3 will run twice, the second Thursday in December and January. So December 9th and 13th, we'll do part 3. And if you want to follow this journey all the way to like a bound signed book, drop a little line to melissabangsmama@gmail.com and ask to be on the mama list, and we'll make that happen. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
One last question. So what do you think will happen? And what's the difference? Should people come back and see it again? Are you planning to make changes? Well, what happens
part 2?
Next month, with this next month?
Yeah, I definitely. So it's interesting. So part 1 we did twice, and I feel like it had landed within me by the second time. I spent time with it in a different way. And so my delivery of it the second time felt like it was less of a reading and more of me. I don't know. There was like more of an intimacy and a knowing in the reading the second time. I'm not planning a major rewrite, but I definitely will be pondering it and visiting it. But I'm also right away jumping into part 3, because it takes me time. I feel like with writing these pieces, I feel like sometimes like a desperate suitor who's trying to prove my worth. Like I show up again and again with flowers, bearing gifts, making ornate offerings to these pieces that are meant to come through me. And like, they don't believe me for a long time. I just keep showing up and showing up and showing up. But what's coming out of me is not it. And then at some point it comes and it's gold. And I think, there you are. There you are. So I got to start writing part 3 like later tonight. Just kidding.
Wonderful again, Melissa. And there's a question in the chat, so just wanted to confirm the right email. Is it Melissa Banks?
It is. And I have to say, I'm going to type it to everyone. I have to say, I'm not even sure I set it up, and I'm not even sure if like caps matter, but those are the exact words. And I'm writing it how I do it with like, there it is there, the littles and the bigs.
There you go. Make it probably won't, you don't need the bigs, but who knows?
Yeah.
So if she doesn't respond, everybody, when you write to her at melissabangsmama@gmail.com, then do it mama, melissabangsmama@gmail.com, and make sure she gets it. Well, thank you. You're back again in November. What date is it again? November
11th.
November 11th.
So it's the second Thursday of every month for the next few months, all the way through January. So yeah, November 11th and December 9th and January, what is that? January 13th, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So thank you. Please consider making a tip. Keep us alive during this wild hybrid time. It's not, it's like this, that. We got to stay alive.
Yes. So feed the healing art.
These things, because how else could we do it except on Marstream with you all who are coming from around the country, and Melissa coming from Montana, that we still get to be. We get to have these conversations. So thank you all for joining us. Melissa, that was brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Writing was unbelievable. I can't wait to hear it again, read it again. Oh my goodness. So as Vanessa says, so good. So good. So
love to everybody. I almost burst into tears sobbing when I was like, and Vanessa and Teresa and Rachel and Lois and Linda and just like and Holly and just Bree and everybody that's here. You got my back. I got yours. I feel so loved. I love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, David, our producer, and our staff.
David,
and everybody came, and I think we have. David, do we have an ending video or not? And Melissa, I hope we talk tomorrow, but we'll all see you in a month.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Stephanie's Marstream at the Marstream. Bye.
Bye.